The quarry had always been a forbidden place. Adults in town warned kids about its depth, the jagged cliffs, and the fact that no lifeguards patrolled its waters. But warnings never stopped teenagers from seeking out its dangerous allure. For Marissa and her group of friends, it was the unofficial closing ritual of every summer, one last chance to feel wild and invincible before school started again. That Saturday evening, the air was thick with heat, even though the sun had already begun to sink behind the tree line. The six of them trekked down the overgrown path, carrying towels, a cooler of sodas, and a speaker blasting faint music. The quarry opened up before them like a dark mirror, its water unnervingly still, as if the surface hadn't been disturbed in years. The rocks along the edge were sharp and uneven, but to the group, they were launching pads for daring dives. Marissa hesitated a little longer than the others before stripping down to her swimsuit. Something about the silence of the place unsettled her. Normally, even ponds or lakes hummed with life, frogs, crickets, the buzzing of insects, but here, the only sounds were their own voices echoing back. Still, she didn't want to be the cautious one, so she forced a grin and joined the others at the water's edge. "Race you to the other side," Alex shouted, his voice full of confidence. He dove in first, slicing into the water with hardly a splash. The others followed, laughing as the coolness embraced them after the sticky heat of the day. Marissa swam out a little, kicking hard, but soon she stopped and floated on her back. The sky was shifting from gold to deep orange, painting the water in firelight. She closed her eyes, enjoying the sensation, until she heard a sharp splash nearby. Opening them again, she scanned the surface. Nothing, just the ripples left behind. She assumed one of her friends had jumped again, though she couldn't see who. That's when she noticed something strange. Near the center of the quarry, a wide ripple spread outward, as if something large had stirred beneath. No one was there, her friends were all clustered by the rocks, laughing and splashing each other. Marissa frowned, treading water, her eyes fixed on the spot. Another ripple, this one larger. The surface bulged, then sank again, like something was rising just under it, testing the boundary between water and air. Her stomach tightened. "Guys," she called, trying to keep her voice even, "do you see that?" Alex swam over, squinting at where she pointed. "What?" "The ripples." "Relax, it's just fish. This place is full of them." But Marissa shook her head. "That's not fish. Look at the size of that." He smirked, clearly eager to show off. "Fine, I'll prove it." Before anyone could stop him, Alex took a deep breath and dove beneath the surface. Seconds passed, then a full minute. At first, no one panicked. Alex was always the one to hold his breath the longest, the one who liked to scare them by staying under until the very last second. But when the water began to calm again, and there was no sign of him, Marissa felt her chest tighten. "Alex," she called, her voice breaking. She swam toward the center, her strokes frantic now. The others grew silent, their laughter gone, all eyes scanning the black water. Then, without warning, his body shot up to the surface. He floated on his back, drifting, his eyes wide open. Marissa rushed to him, grabbing his arm. But when she turned his face toward her, she nearly screamed. His pupils were dilated, his skin pale, and his lips slightly blue. It was as if all the color had been drained from him in just those missing minutes. "Alex, are you okay? What happened?" she begged, shaking him. But his mouth only hung open, no words coming out. His chest rose and fell, shallow and irregular, like he'd been drowning for hours instead of seconds. When she pulled him toward shore, he didn't resist, but his gaze never left the center of the quarry. It was locked there, fixed on the place where the ripples had begun. The group huddled around him once they dragged him out, everyone talking at once, panicked, unsure of what to do. But Alex wouldn't speak. He just lay there, trembling, eyes wide and distant, like he had seen something far beneath the surface that none of them could imagine. Marissa shivered, wrapping her towel tightly around her. The air had grown colder, and the sun was nearly gone. She didn't know what Alex had seen, but she knew one thing for certain: something was alive in that quarry. And it had touched him. They never went back again. For most kids in town, the end of summer carnival was the highlight of the season. The rides were rickety, the prizes cheap, and the food overpriced, but none of that mattered. The flashing neon lights, the sugary smell of cotton candy, and the constant music of calliopes and screaming riders gave the place an energy that made everyone feel alive. For 17-year-old Dylan, the carnival meant freedom, a night to stay out late with his friends, eat junk food, and forget that school was only days away. That year, however, something new caught his attention. Beyond the Ferris wheel and the ring toss, tucked into a shadowed corner of the grounds, stood a tent he had never seen before. Its canvas was faded, a dull maroon that seemed out of place among the bright colors of the other attractions. A crooked sign, barely legible under the flickering string lights, read, "The Future Seer. Fortune Teller." One of his friends scoffed. What a scam. But Dylan felt drawn to it. Something about the way it stood apart, as though it didn't belong, intrigued him. Maybe it was the thrill of trying something different, or maybe it was the way the shadows around the tent seemed thicker than anywhere else on the carnival grounds. "I'm going in," he said, ignoring the rolled eyes of his friends. Inside, the air was colder, heavy with the scent of incense that burned in a small clay bowl. The only light came from a single candle on a wooden table, its flame casting long, dancing shadows on the tent walls. Sitting behind the table was a woman so frail she looked like she might crumble into dust if touched. Her hair was long and white, her skin pale and sagging, and her eyes, cloudy and almost milky, locked onto Dylan's the moment he stepped inside. "Sit," she rasped, gesturing with one crooked finger. Dylan hesitated before lowering himself into the chair across from her. She reached out her hand, bony and cold, and took his. Her nails were long and yellowed, her touch unsettling. He almost pulled away, but something about her grip kept him frozen in place. She leaned closer, her cloudy eyes unblinking, and whispered words that made the hairs on his neck rise. "Your summer ends tonight." Dylan let out a shaky laugh, trying to cover his unease. "Good one. Real spooky. How much do I owe you?" But she didn't answer. She only released his hand slowly, her gaze still piercing, as though she saw something beyond him. Dylan backed out of the tent quickly, grateful to be surrounded again by the noise and chaos of the carnival. He brushed it off as nothing more than a creepy old woman trying to make money. Still, the words stuck with him. Even as he rode the spinning teacups and stuffed his face with funnel cake, the phrase echoed in his mind. "Your summer ends tonight." By the time the carnival was shutting down, Dylan's friends were ready to head home, but he lingered. He stood near the Ferris wheel, watching as workers began turning off lights and packing up booths. The grounds were strangely quiet without the constant music, and shadows stretched long under the dim lamps. That's when he saw her again. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, but no, it was her. The fortune teller. She was standing just beyond the gate, half hidden in darkness, her frail frame impossibly still. Her lips curved into a smile, thin, unnatural, knowing. Dylan blinked, and in that instant, she was gone. A chill ran through him, but he shook it off, telling himself he was imagining things. He got into his car and started the long drive home, the back roads empty and silent. His hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror more often than he'd like to admit. Every time his headlights swept across the road, he thought he saw movement at the edges, something pale slipping just out of view. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a figure stepped into the middle of the road. Dylan's heart leapt into his throat as he slammed the brakes, tires screeching. For a split second, illuminated in the headlights, he saw her, the fortune teller, her white hair billowing as if caught in a wind that didn't exist, her pale eyes staring directly into his. The car spun off the road, crashing into the ditch. The windshield shattered, glass raining down, and Dylan's world went black. Witnesses later claimed they saw his headlights swerving and heard the crash from nearby houses. When they rushed out to help, they found the wreckage, the car twisted and broken. Dylan was pulled from the driver's seat, bloodied but alive, muttering over and over, "She was there, she was there." But no one else saw the woman. No footprints, no sign of her tent at the carnival the next day. It was as though she had never existed. Yet Dylan knew what he had seen, and the haunting words she had whispered were true. His summer had ended that night, in ways he would never forget. For Hannah, summers always ended at her grandmother's farmhouse, a place nestled deep in the countryside where the cornfields stretched on forever and the air carried the smell of hay and earth. Usually, she loved it. The porch swings creaked in the wind, fireflies danced in the tall grass at dusk, and her grandmother's warm pies made everything feel safe and comforting. But this year, something felt different. From the moment she stepped out of her parents' car and hugged her grandmother, she noticed how quiet everything was. Too quiet. The farm usually buzzed with life, the chirping of crickets, the distant croak of frogs, the hum of insects. This time, the silence felt heavy, pressing down on her like a blanket. Even the cornfields, which usually swayed and rustled with the breeze, seemed unnaturally still. That first night, Hannah tried to brush it off. She read books in bed, listened to the faint creaks of the old farmhouse, and eventually drifted to sleep. But on the second night, she was jolted awake by a noise outside her window. A faint scratching sound, slow and deliberate, like fingernails dragging across wood. Her heart hammered. She pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. At first, she thought her tired eyes were playing tricks on her. Standing in the middle of the cornfield was a figure. It was tall and thin, its body oddly stiff, and its head hung at a crooked angle, as if its neck had been snapped. She told herself it was just the scarecrow her grandmother always kept out there to ward off crows. But then it moved. Not much, just a single, jerky step forward. Hannah gasped, her breath fogging up the window. The figure's head tilted further, almost upside down, its eyes, or what should have been its eyes, locked on her room. Her scream tore through the night as she stumbled backward. Within moments, her grandmother burst through the door, hair disheveled, worry etched on her face. "What is it, Hannah?" "The scarecrow. It's in the field. It was looking at me," Hannah cried, pointing toward the window. Her grandmother rushed over, pulled back the curtain, and scanned the field. Nothing, just endless rows of corn swaying gently in the night breeze. "There's nothing there, sweetheart. It must have been a dream." But Hannah knew what she'd seen. The next morning, she refused to let it go. Over breakfast, she told her grandmother everything, the crooked neck, the way it had moved, the scratching on the wall. Her grandmother's face went pale. She set her coffee cup down with trembling hands. "Hannah," she said quietly, "there hasn't been a scarecrow in that field for 20 years. "What do you mean?" Hannah whispered. Her grandmother hesitated, then leaned closer. "We burned it, after the accidents." The word accidents sent a chill down Hannah's spine. "What accidents?" Her grandmother shook her head, clearly unwilling to say more. "It doesn't matter. What matters is, there should be nothing in that field." The rest of the day crawled by, every shadow making Hannah jump. By nightfall, she was too afraid to sleep. She sat up in bed, hugging her knees, listening. And then she heard it again, the scratching. This time, it wasn't just outside the window. It was along the walls of the farmhouse itself, as though something was circling the house, dragging its nails across the wood. Her throat tightened. She crept to the window, heart racing, and peeked out once more. There it was, closer this time. The figure stood at the very edge of the field, its body towering and twisted, its head bent too far to one side. As she watched, it lifted an arm, longer than any human arm should be, and scraped its fingers slowly across the wall, making the sound that had haunted her all night. Hannah stumbled back, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run to her grandmother, to scream for help, but her legs wouldn't move. The figure tilted its head again, impossibly far, until it looked like it might snap clean off. And then, it smiled. Not with lips or teeth, but with a gash that tore across its face, splitting its head into something monstrous and unnatural. Hannah choked on a sob, and at that exact moment, the farmhouse door slammed somewhere downstairs. Heavy footsteps echoed through the halls. Her grandmother's voice rose, frantic and sharp, chanting something Hannah didn't understand, words that weren't in English. The scratching stopped. The footsteps faded. Silence swallowed the house again. When morning came, her grandmother looked exhausted, her eyes heavy, her voice firm. "You must never look for it again, Hannah. It feeds on fear. That's why we burned it once. But some things don't stay gone." Hannah never returned to the farmhouse after that summer. But some nights, long after, she still woke to the sound of scratching at her window, and the faint image of a crooked head watching from the shadows.